The wind howled through the valley like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of pine and the promise of an early winter. Mary Collins stood at the window of her cabin, watching the storm clouds gather over the distant mountains, her small hands pressed against the cold glass, leaving fog marks that quickly faded in the chill air. Behind her, little Emma played with corn-husk dolls by the fireplace, humming a tune her father used to sing. The child was only 5, too young to fully understand why Papa hadn't come home from the logging camp last spring, too young to know that the fever had taken him, leaving them alone in this vast wilderness. Mary turned from the window and surveyed their humble dwelling. The cabin was small, just one room with a loft where they slept. Every log in the walls, every board in the floor held memories of James. He'd built this place with his own hands, promising her it would be their paradise. Now it felt more like a cage against the wild. "Mama, I'm hungry," Emma said, looking up with those big brown eyes that were so much like her father's. "I know. Sweetheart, supper will be ready soon." Mary moved to the iron stove, stirring the thin soup that would be their evening meal. 3 potatoes, a carrot, and a handful of dried beans. It would have to do. The root cellar was getting low, and winter hadn't even properly begun. She'd need to make another trip to town soon, though the thought of facing those pitying looks from the townspeople made her stomach turn. Outside, the chickens squawked in their coop. She'd need to gather the eggs before the storm hit. Everything was a calculation now. How much wood to burn, how much food to eat, how many candles to light. Each decision could mean the difference between surviving the winter or... She pushed the thought away. They would survive. They had to. The afternoon wore on with its familiar rhythm. Mary mended Emma's torn dress while the child practiced her letters on a slate board. Education was a luxury out here, but Mary was determined her daughter would know how to read and write. It was one of the few gifts she could still give. M-O-U-N-T-A-I-N, Emma spelled out loud, her tongue poking out in concentration. "Very good," Mary praised, though her eyes drifted to the actual mountains visible through the window. They loomed like ancient giants, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Sometimes she felt they were watching her, waiting for her to fail. As evening approached, the wind picked up. Mary ventured outside to secure the chicken coop and bring in more firewood. The axe felt heavy in her hands as she split log after log. Her palms were calloused now, her arms stronger than they'd ever been back in Ohio. This land had changed her, hardened her in ways she never expected. She paused to catch her breath, looking out across the valley. Their nearest neighbor was 3 miles away, old Sam Henderson and his wife. They'd been kind after James died, bringing food and offering help. But Mary's pride wouldn't let her accept charity. She and Emma would make it on their own. The isolation was the hardest part. Days would pass without seeing another soul. Just her, Emma, and the endless wilderness. Sometimes she talked to James in her mind, asking him what to do, how to fix the leak in the roof or doctor a sick chicken. His answers never came, but the talking helped. Back inside, they ate their simple supper by candlelight. Emma chattered about the butterfly she'd seen that morning, how its wings looked like stained glass in the church they used to attend back east. Mary smiled and nodded, treasuring these moments of innocence. After supper, she read to Emma from their worn Bible, the only book they owned. The child's favorite was the story of David and Goliath, the small defeating the mighty. Perhaps she sensed something in it that spoke to their own situation. As Mary tucked Emma into the loft bed, the little girl asked, "Will the storm be bad tonight, Mama?" "Maybe," Mary answered honestly. "But we're safe in here. Papa built this cabin strong." Emma nodded, satisfied. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing soft and even. Mary stayed beside her for a moment, smoothing the child's dark hair. This little girl was her whole world now, her reason for pushing through each difficult day. Climbing back down the ladder, Mary set about her evening chores. She banked the fire, checked the door latch twice, and placed the shotgun within easy reach. James had taught her to shoot, though she'd never had to use it on anything more than a fox trying to get at the chickens. The storm was building now. Rain began to pelt the roof, and the wind found every tiny gap in the chinking between the logs. Mary lit another candle and sat at the rough table, working on her sewing by its flickering light. Her fingers moved automatically, years of practice guiding them. She thought about the coming winter, the fourth they'd face in this place, but the first without James. The woodpile needed to be bigger. She'd have to learn to hunt. The thought made her queasy, but meat would help them survive. Maybe she could trade eggs for ammunition in town. The loneliness pressed in with the darkness. Back in Ohio, she'd been surrounded by family, friends, church socials, and quilting bees. Here, there was only the wind in the mountains and the occasional howl of a wolf in the distance. She'd chosen this life, followed James west with stars in her eyes and dreams of adventure. Now those dreams felt as distant as the stars themselves. But there was strength in her too, growing like a seedling in rocky soil. Each day she survived was a victory. Each smile she coaxed from Emma was a treasure. She was no longer the soft girl who'd needed help lifting a water bucket. This land was forging her into something harder, something that could endure. Thunder crashed overhead, making the cabin shudder. Mary set aside her sewing and moved to the window. Lightning illuminated the valley in stark, brief moments. The mountains looked like jagged teeth against the sky, beautiful and terrible, just like this life she'd found herself living. She pressed her hand to the glass again, feeling the cold seep through. Somewhere out there, other families were huddled in their own cabins, fighting their own battles against the wilderness. The thought brought a strange comfort. She wasn't alone, not really. They were all in this together, all trying to carve out lives in this unforgiving land. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The roof might leak, the chickens might take sick, Emma might cry for her papa. But tomorrow would also bring sunrise over the mountains, eggs from the hens, and her daughter's laughter. It would bring another day of survival, another small victory against the odds. Mary turned from the window and prepared for bed. She said her prayers, asking for strength, for wisdom, for just enough grace to make it through another day. Then she climbed to the loft, careful not to wake Emma, and lay down beside her daughter. The storm raged on, but inside the little cabin, two hearts beat steadily through the night. They were small against the vastness of the wilderness, vulnerable against the power of nature, but they were also fierce in their determination, bound by a love that no storm could break. In the morning, Mary would rise before dawn, stoke the fire, and face another day. She would do it because she had to, because Emma needed her, because giving up wasn't an option. She would do it because somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and exhaustion, a small flame of hope still burned. This cabin in the wilderness wasn't the paradise James had promised, but it was home. And as long as she had breath in her body and strength in her arms, she would defend it, and the precious life it sheltered, against whatever the mountains might send their way. The storm struck with the fury of God's own wrath. Mary had weathered many storms in these mountains, but this one was different. The wind didn't just howl, it screamed, tearing at the cabin's roof like a wild beast. Rain hammered against the walls in sheets so thick she couldn't see past the window. Emma whimpered in her sleep as thunder crashed overhead. Mary held her close, feeling the cabin shudder with each gust. The fireplace smoke backed up, filling the room with acrid clouds that made them both cough. She'd need to check if something was blocking the chimney, but not tonight. Tonight, survival meant staying inside. Around midnight, the storm reached its peak. Mary lay awake, listening to the roof groan under the assault. Then came a sound that made her blood run cold, the crack of splitting wood somewhere above. She held her breath, praying the roof would hold. That's when she heard it. Through the chaos of wind and rain came a different sound, a heavy thud against the door. Then another, not the random battering of debris, but deliberate, rhythmic. Someone, or something, was knocking. Mary's hand found the shotgun in the darkness. Mountain cats sometimes came down during storms, and bears, though they should be hibernating soon. But this didn't sound like an animal. The knocking came again, weaker this time. Then a voice, barely audible above the storm. "Please, help!" Every instinct screamed at her to stay put. A woman alone with a child didn't open her door to strangers in the dead of night. But something in that voice, the pure desperation of it, made her hesitate. "Mama?" Emma stirred, frightened by the noise. "Shh, baby, stay here." Mary crept down from the loft, shotgun in hand. The knocking had stopped, but she could hear something scraping against the door. She pressed her ear to the wood. "Please." The voice was fading. "Hurt." Against her better judgment, Mary lifted the heavy bar that secured the door. She opened it just a crack, rain immediately driving through the gap. What she saw made her gasp. A man lay crumpled on her doorstep, so large his body blocked most of the entrance. In the lightning's flash, she saw torn clothing, blood mixing with rainwater, and a face twisted in pain. But it was his size that shocked her most. He was enormous, broader than any man she'd ever seen. Like something out of Emma's fairy tales, he wasn't moving now. Mary stood frozen, rain soaking through her nightdress. She could close the door, bar it again, pretend this never happened. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice. But then she thought of James, how he'd never turned away anyone in need, how he'd say that God put people in each other's paths for a reason. "Lord, help me," she muttered, setting the shotgun aside. Getting him inside was like trying to move a fallen tree. Mary grabbed under his arms and pulled with all her strength. He groaned, but didn't wake. Inch by inch, she dragged him across the threshold, rain pouring in around them. His weight was staggering. It took everything she had to move him even a few feet. Finally, she got him far enough inside to close the door. He lay there like a mountain himself had decided to rest on her floor. In the firelight, she could see him better. His clothes were good quality but torn to shreds. Dark stains covered his chest and side, blood, and plenty of it. His face, beneath a wild beard, was pale as death. "Mama, who is that?" Emma peered down from the loft, eyes wide. "Someone who needs help. Stay up there, sweetheart." Mary fetched her medical supplies. Not much, just what any frontier woman kept on hand. Clean cloth, whiskey for cleaning wounds, needle and thread. James had taught her basic doctoring, said it was necessary knowledge out here where the nearest physician was a day's ride away. She cut away the stranger's shirt, revealing the damage beneath. Deep gashes crossed his chest, like claw marks from some great beast. Another wound in his side seeped steadily. Bear, maybe, or mountain cat. Whatever had attacked him had come close to killing him. Working by firelight, Mary cleaned the wounds as best she could. The whiskey made him thrash and moan. But he didn't wake. She stitched the worst gashes closed, her hands steady despite her fear. The needle looked tiny against his massive frame. His size unsettled her. Lying there, he took up most of the floor space between the fireplace and table. His hands were like ham hocks, his shoulders broader than seemed possible. Yet for all his size, he looked vulnerable now, fevered and fighting for life. She covered him with every blanket they could spare, building up the fire until the cabin was almost too warm. Then she sat back, exhausted, watching his chest rise and fall. The storm still raged outside, but inside, and strange quiet had settled. "Is he going to die, Mama?" Emma had crept down despite orders to stay put. "I don't know, baby. We'll do our best to help him." They spent the rest of the night keeping vigil. Mary dozed in her chair, jerking awake each time the stranger's breathing changed. Emma curled up beside her, fascinated and frightened in equal measure by their enormous guest. As dawn broke, the storm finally exhausted itself. Weak sunlight filtered through the windows, revealing the full extent of the stranger's presence. He dominated the small cabin, making everything around him look child-sized. Mary couldn't imagine how he'd even fit through the door when standing. His fever broke mid-morning. Mary was changing the bandages when his eyes suddenly opened, gray as the storm clouds, but shot through with pain. He stared at her, confused, trying to speak through cracked lips. "Easy," she said, offering him water. "You're safe." He drank greedily, then fell back, exhausted by even that small effort. His voice, when it came, was like distant thunder. "Where? My cabin? In the valley below Timber Ridge. You knocked on my door last night." Those gray eyes focused on her with surprising intensity. "You let me in?" "Couldn't very well leave you to die on my doorstep." Something crossed his face. Surprise, maybe, or disbelief. Like kindness from strangers was foreign to him. "The child," he whispered, noticing Emma peeking from behind Mary's skirts. "My daughter, Emma." He closed his eyes. "Shouldn't be here. Danger." "You're in no danger here, Mr. Just rest." "No, I'm the danger." But sleep took him before he could explain. Mary stood looking down at him. This mountain of a man who spoke of danger yet seemed so lost. His presence filled her cabin, changed it somehow. The walls felt smaller, but also, strangely, safer, as if his sheer size could shield them from the wilderness outside. She touched Emma's hair. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's fix some breakfast. Our guest will need food when he wakes." Emma nodded, but kept staring at the stranger. "He's bigger than Papa was." "Yes," Mary agreed quietly. "Much bigger." As she worked at the stove, Mary wondered what she'd invited into their lives. The stranger's wound spoke of violence, his words of danger. Yet something in those gray eyes, that moment of disbelief at her kindness, tugged at her heart. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. But inside the little cabin, Mary sensed a different kind of storm brewing, one that would test not just her courage, but her heart as well. She looked back at the sleeping giant by her fire, at his face softened by sleep and fever. Whatever came next, there was no going back now. She'd opened her door to him, and in doing so, had perhaps opened it to a future she couldn't yet imagine. The bacon sizzled in the pan. Emma hummed her father's tune, and the stranger slept on. But beneath the peaceful domestic scene, Mary felt the tremor of change, like the first rumblings of an avalanche high in the mountains above. 3 days passed before the stranger could sit up without the world spinning. Mary watched him struggle with the simplest movements, this giant of a man reduced to weakness by fever and wounds. Yet he never complained, never asked for more than water and the occasional crust of bread. "You need to eat properly," Mary insisted, bringing him a bowl of stew. "You'll never heal on bread alone." He took the bowl carefully, as if afraid his large hands might crush it. "Thank you, ma'am. You're too kind. It's Mary Collins." She settled into her chair across from him, keeping a careful distance. "And you are?" "Elias." He paused, as if deciding whether to share more. "Elias Thornton." Emma peeked around her mother's chair, still fascinated by their guest. She'd been circling him like a curious cat for days, drawing closer each time. Now she ventured. "Why are you so big?" "Emma," Mary scolded, but Elias's face softened, the first real emotion she'd seen from him besides pain. "It's all right." His voice was gentle, so at odds with his imposing frame. "I've always been this way, little one, since I was a boy. My mama used to say God made me from leftover mountain." Emma giggled. The sound brightened the small cabin. "That's silly. People aren't made of mountain." "No." Elias managed a small smile. "Then how do you explain me?" It was such a simple moment, a large man joking with a small child, but something in it made Mary's chest tight. She watched Emma inch closer, no longer frightened by his size. As Elias ate, Mary studied him. Despite his rough appearance, his manners were careful, refined even. He held the spoon properly, said please and thank you, and was careful not to spill. These weren't the ways of a wild mountain man. "You're not from around here," she observed. His gray eyes flicked to hers, wary. "No, ma'am, Virginia, originally. Been moving west for a long time." "What happened to you? Those wounds?" "Bear," he said quickly, too quickly. "Surprised me in a cave during the storm." Mary didn't challenge the lie, though she knew bear claws didn't leave marks like that. Whatever had hurt him, he wasn't ready to share. She understood keeping secrets. She had her own. That night, after Emma was asleep, Mary found Elias attempting to stand. He'd managed to pull himself up using the table, but swayed dangerously, face pale with effort. "You'll tear your stitches," she warned, moving to steady him. "I need to leave." His jaw was set with determination. "I've imposed enough. You can barely stand. Where would you go?" "I have a camp, up the mountain. In this condition, you wouldn't make it 100 yards. She guided him back down, surprised when he didn't resist. Besides, the passes are probably snowed in after that storm. He sank back to the floor, defeated. Up close, she could smell wood smoke and pine on him, wild scents that seemed to cling to his skin. His size should have frightened her. One of his hands could easily span her waist, but instead, she felt oddly protected. "Why did you help me?" he asked suddenly. "A woman alone with a child? You should have barred the door." Mary considered her answer. "My husband always said we're all we have out here. If we don't help each other, the wilderness wins." "Your husband—" His eyes went to her black dress, understanding dawning. "I'm sorry. Spring fever, 8 months ago." The words came easier now, worn smooth by repetition. "He was a good man, and left you here alone." There was no judgment in his voice, just observation. Mary bristled anyway. "This is our home. Emma was born in this cabin. I won't be driven out by hardship." "I didn't mean—" He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "You're brave, braver than most." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Finally, Elias spoke again, so quietly she almost missed it. "I know what it's like, being alone. It's been years since anyone showed me kindness without wanting something in return. Surely you have family, friends." He laughed, bitter and short. "Look at me. Do I look like someone people welcome into their homes?" Mary did look, really looked, past the size, past the wildness. She saw the loneliness etched in every line of his face, the way he held himself carefully, as if trying to take up less space, the surprise in his eyes each time she or Emma treated him normally. "People fear what they don't understand," she said carefully. "They fear monsters." His voice was flat. "And maybe they're right to. You're not a monster." "How can you know that?" "Because monsters don't joke with little girls about being made of mountain. They don't say please and thank you. They don't try to leave to protect others from danger." He stared at her, something vulnerable flickering in those storm-gray eyes. Then he looked away, jaw working as if fighting emotion. "You don't know what I've done, where I've been." "No," Mary agreed. "But I know what I've seen. And I've seen a man who, despite his pain, his fever, never once raised his voice or made a threatening move, even delirious. You were gentle." Elias was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't speak again. Then, "My father sent me away when I was 15. Said I was getting too big, scaring the neighbors. Been wandering ever since. 23 years. The confession hung between them. Mary felt the weight of it. All those years of solitude. She thought of her own loneliness these past months and couldn't imagine enduring it for decades. That must have been hard. He shrugged, a movement like boulders shifting. "You learn to live with it. Stay to the mountains, the wild places. Take work where you can, logging camps, mines, places where strength matters more than looks. Is that what brought you here?" "Trappin'. Fur's good in these mountains." He hesitated. "I have a cabin, day's walk north. Nothing like this, just walls and a roof. But it's quiet." Mary heard what he didn't say. Quiet meant alone, safe from stares and whispers and fear. "Well," she said briskly, standing, "you're welcome here until you're healed. After that—" She paused, surprised by her own words. "After that, you're still welcome. For meals, for company, if you want." Elias looked up at her, and for a moment his face was utterly open, defenseless. Why? Because everyone deserves kindness. Mr. Thornton, even men made of leftover mountain. Something shifted in his expression. A wall coming down, brick by brick. Elias. He corrected softly. Just Elias. Elias, then. Later, as she prepared for bed, Mary caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Not desire. She knew what that looked like. This was something deeper, more confused, like a man seeing sunlight after years underground. Good night, Elias. Good night, Mary. And thank you. She climbed to the loft, but sleep was elusive. Below, she could hear him shifting, trying to find comfort on the hard floor. His presence filled the cabin in ways beyond the physical. It had been so long since there'd been a man's breathing in the darkness, a masculine energy in their feminine space. But more than that, she sensed a kindred spirit, another soul marked by loss, by isolation. Someone who understood that wilderness existed not just in the mountains, but in the human heart. Emma murmured in her sleep, and Mary stroked her hair. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Her supplies were running low, and she'd need to figure out how to feed 3 instead of 2. The townspeople would talk if they learned about her visitor, and Elias himself remained a mystery, his past full of shadows. Yet, for the first time in months, Mary didn't feel entirely alone. Strange as it was, this wounded giant had brought something back to their little cabin. Not safety, she wasn't fool enough to think that, but possibility, the chance that life might hold more than mere survival. Below, Elias's breathing deepened into sleep. Mary closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. For tonight, at least, the wilderness was held at bay. Tomorrow could bring what it would. Tonight, they were 3 souls sheltered together against the vast indifference of the mountains. And that, Mary thought as sleep finally took her, was no small thing. The morning Elias first stood without help, Emma clapped her small hands together like he'd performed a miracle. He towered over them both, his head nearly brushing the cabin rafters, but his smile was shy as a schoolboy's. "Look, Mama, Mister, Elias is tall as a tree." "Taller," Mary murmured, craning her neck to meet his eyes. She'd known he was large, but seeing him upright was different. He could have crushed them both without effort, yet he moved with such careful deliberation, as if afraid of breaking something. "I should get to work," he said. "Pay back your kindness." "You're still healing. Please." The word came out rougher than he intended. "I need to be useful. Can't stand being idle." Mary understood that need. After James died, work had been her salvation. The woodpile needs splitting. "But don't overdo." He was already moving toward the door, eager as a caged animal granted freedom. Mary watched him go, noting how he turned sideways to fit through the doorframe, from the window. She and Emma watched him work. The axe looked like a toy in his hands. What took Mary 20 minutes of hard labor, he accomplished in 5 easy swings. Wood split cleanly under his attention, falling into neat piles. "He's strong," Emma observed with the simple wisdom of children. "Yes," Mary's eyes tracked the smooth rhythm of his movements. Despite his size, there was grace there, economy of motion, very strong. As days passed, Elias threw himself into every task with quiet determination. He repaired the chicken coop's sagging roof, reinforced the fence posts, patched holes in the barn walls. Projects James had planned but never completed were finished in afternoons. "You don't have to fix everything," Mary protested, finding him replacing boards in the porch one morning. "Want to?" He didn't look up from his work. "Feels good. Having purpose." She brought him water, watched him drink deeply. Sweat made his shirt cling, outlining muscles that seemed carved from stone. But it was his face that held her attention, the concentrated furrow of his brow, the satisfaction when a board fit perfectly. "You're good at this. Learned young. Before—" He stopped, shadows crossing his features. Had to be useful, only way people would— Another stop, as if words were dangerous territory. "Tolerate you?" Mary suggested gently. His hand stilled on the hammer. Something like that. Emma had no such reservations about Elias. She followed him like a devoted shadow. chattering about everything and nothing. At first, he seemed bewildered by her attention, glancing at Mary as if seeking permission. But slowly, he began responding to her endless questions. How come you're so big? Born that way. Little miss. Does it hurt? Sometimes. Knees and back, mostly. Can you reach the top shelf without standing on a chair? Higher than that. Can you lift our cow? Haven't tried. Don't think she'd appreciate it. Mary found herself smiling at their exchanges. Elias answered each question seriously, never dismissive or impatient. When Emma brought him her slate to show her letters, he praised her work with genuine enthusiasm. One afternoon, Mary returned from gathering eggs to find them by the garden plot. Emma was pointing at the neglected earth, explaining her grand plans for spring planting. Elias listened intently, nodding at her ambitious schemes for corn and beans and squash. Soil needs work, he said when Emma finally paused for breath. But it's good land. Could grow plenty. Papa started it. Emma's voice went small. But he got sick. Elias's huge hand settled on her tiny shoulder, gentle as a butterfly landing. Your papa picked a fine spot. Southern exposure. Natural drainage. Man knew his farming. Emma beamed up at him, and Mary felt her heart constrict. It was such a simple kindness, validating James's work, giving Emma that connection to her father. That evening, after Emma was abed, Mary found Elias sketching in the dirt with a stick. Garden plans, he explained, almost embarrassed. If you want. Could expand it. Add irrigation from the creek. Plenty of room for everything Emma mentioned. You don't have to. I know. He looked up at her, firelight dancing in his gray eyes. But I'd like to, if I'm still here come spring. The question hung between them, unspoken but loud. How long would he stay? How long did she want him to? You're always saying that, Mary said softly, that you know you don't have to help. Why? Elias was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he did, his voice was low, careful. Most folks, when someone like me offers help, they see threat, get nervous, think I want something or I'm trying to. He shrugged. Just want you to know it's freely given. I'm not afraid of you. No. Wonder colored the word. You're not. Can't figure why. Mary moved closer. Had to tilt her head back to see his face. Maybe because I see who you really are. And who's that? A good man who's been alone too long. Something broke in his expression then, raw and vulnerable. His hand lifted as if to touch her face, then dropped. Mary! Mr. Elias! Emma's voice from the loft. There's something outside. The moment shattered. Elias was on his feet instantly. Alert! Mary heard it then, scratching at the walls, low growls, wolves, probably drawn by the smell of the chickens. Stay here, Elias commanded, grabbing the shotgun. That's my... But he was already gone, moving with surprising speed for his size. Mary ran to the window, Emma climbing down to press beside her. In the moonlight, they saw him, a giant facing down 3 wolves who'd cornered against the chicken coop. The shotgun looked like a child's toy in his hands, but his stance was steady, assured. Get! His roar was tremendous, echoing off the mountains. Go on! Get! He fired once into the air. The wolves scattered, but one, braver or hungrier than the rest, lunged. Elias swung the shotgun like a club, catching the animal mid-leap. It yelped and fled after its packmates. He stood there a moment longer, ensuring they were gone, then turned back to the cabin. Mary met him at the door. Are you hurt? No. He handed her the shotgun, noticed his hands were shaking slightly. They're gone. Might want to pen the chickens inside the barn for a few nights. Elias. She caught his arm as he moved past. Even through the shirt, she could feel the solid strength of him. Thank you. He looked down at where her hand rested on his arm, then at her face. Always, he said simply. Later, after securing the chickens and calming Emma, Mary lay in her bed thinking. The moment before the wolves. What had he been about to say? And why did she wish so desperately to know? Below, she could hear him moving about, checking locks, adding wood to the fire, standing guard. She realized, protecting them even now. "Mama?" Emma whispered. "Is Mr. Elias going to stay with us?" "I don't know. Sweetheart, I hope he does. He makes us safe." Safe. Yes, that was part of it. But as Mary listened to his careful movements below, she knew it was more than that. He made them feel complete in a way they hadn't since James died. Not a replacement. Nothing could replace Emma's father, but something new, unexpected. A man made of leftover mountain, gentle enough to praise a child's letters, strong enough to face down wolves, lonely enough to sketch garden plans in the dirt. A contradiction that somehow made perfect sense. "Me too," Mary whispered to the darkness. "I hope so too." Outside, wind sighed through the pines, and the mountains stood eternal guard. But inside the little cabin, 3 hearts beat through the night, no longer quite so alone, no longer quite so afraid. And in that fragile, growing connection lay the seeds of something that might, with care and courage, bloom come spring. The evening started like any other. Emma was practicing her numbers while Mary mended a torn apron. Elias sat by the fire, carefully whittling a piece of pine into what looked like a doll for Emma. The domestic peace was so complete that Mary almost forgot they'd only known each other 2 weeks. "Tell us a story. Mr. Elias," Emma requested, abandoning her slate. "About when you were little." Elias's hand stilled on the wood. Mary saw the tension creep into his shoulders, the way he did when anyone asked about his past. "Not much to tell, little miss." "Everyone has stories," Emma insisted with 5-year-old certainty. "Mama tells me about when she was small in Ohio, about her mama's apple orchard and the creek where she caught tadpoles." "Emma, if Mr. Elias doesn't want to, it's all right." He set down the whittling, stared into the fire. "I suppose I could tell you about the horses." Emma scooted closer, eyes bright with interest. Mary set aside her sewing, drawn by the rare offer of his history. "My father raised horses." Elias began slowly. "Beautiful animals, Morgans, mostly, strong but elegant. I loved them from the time I could walk." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "When I was your age, maybe 6, there was this mare, Buttercup. We called her gentlest thing you ever saw." "Did you ride her?" Emma asked. "I wanted to. Begged my father every day, but he said I was too young, too small." Elias laughed, short and bitter. "Last time anyone called me small." He picked up the wood again, hands needing occupation. "One morning, I snuck out before dawn, climbed up on the fence and managed to get on Buttercup's back. She didn't mind, patient as a saint, that horse. We walked around the paddock, and I felt like a king." "What happened?" Emma was entranced. "My father found us. I expected a whipping, but he just looked at me, really looked. Then he lifted me down and said, 'You've got good hands. Boy, gentle hands. Horses know.'" Elias's voice grew thick. "Started teaching me to ride proper after that. Said I had a gift." "You must have been a good rider," Mary said softly. "I was, until I got too big." The bitterness returned. "By the time I was 12, I was near 6 feet. By 15, he shrugged. "No horse could carry me comfortable. Father had to use me for groundwork only, training, grooming, birthing." "But you still loved them?" "Always. Even when I couldn't ride anymore. I'd spend hours in the barn. Horses didn't care that I was different. Long as I was gentle, they trusted me." Emma climbed into his lap without invitation, settling against his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Elias froze, looking at Mary with near panic. "It's all right," Mary mouthed, slowly, carefully. His arm came around the child. Emma played with one of his huge fingers, comparing it to her own tiny ones. "What happened to the horses?" she asked innocently. The silence stretched too long. When Elias spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "I had to leave." "Why?" "Emma, that's enough questions," Mary intervened, seeing the pain etched in his features. But Elias shook his head. It's all right. She should know. He took a breath. I grew too big. Little Miss scared people, scared the other children. Their parents complained, said I was unnatural. That's mean, Emma declared with simple indignation. Maybe, or maybe they were right to be careful. When you're different, people worry what you might do. But you're nice, Emma protested. You fixed our chicken coop and made me a doll and scared away the wolves. Not everyone saw it that way, Elias said quietly. There was an incident. A boy from town, older than me but half my size. He was bothering one of the horse buyer's daughters. Wouldn't leave her be. I told him to stop. Mary could see where this was going, felt her heart ache for the boy he'd been. He threw a punch, barely felt it, but I pushed him away. Just pushed. Elias's hand clenched. Broke his arm. Didn't mean to. Just happened. After that, the whole town was convinced I was dangerous, a monster waiting to happen. So your father sent you away, Mary said. It wasn't a question. Said it was for my own good. Maybe it was, but I was 15, and all I knew was horses and home, and suddenly, I had neither. Emma twisted in his lap to look up at his face. That's the saddest story I ever heard. Oh, little miss. His voice broke slightly. Don't be sad for me. I've seen beautiful country. I've met some kind people along the way. And now I'm here, with you and your mama. That's not sad at all. But Mary saw the truth in his eyes. 23 years of wandering, of being feared and shunned, of having strength that only isolated him further. She rose, moved to them, placed her hand on his shoulder. You were just a boy protecting someone. That's not monstrous. That's human. Humans don't accidentally break bones just by pushing. No, Mary agreed. But humans make mistakes. Humans hurt when they don't mean to. Humans carry guilt for things beyond their control. That's the most human thing there is. Elias looked up at her, and she saw that boy in his eyes, confused, frightened, cast out for the crime of being different. Without thinking, she cupped his face, thumb brushing his cheekbone. You're not a monster, Elias Thornton. You're a man who's been carrying too much weight for too long. A tear escaped down his cheek, quickly wiped away. Emma threw her small arms around his neck, barely spanning halfway. Don't cry, Mr. Elias. We love you. The words hung in the air like a bell's chime. Mary's breath caught. Elias went absolutely still. Emma, Mary started. We do, Emma insisted with childhood certainty. You're part of our family now. Right, Mama. Mary met Elias's eyes over her daughter's head. So much hope there, mixed with fear, like a man afraid to reach for something precious. Sure it would shatter at his touch. Right, she whispered. Elias closed his eyes, pulled Emma closer with infinite care. When he opened them again, they were clear, decided. I need to tell you both something about how I really got hurt. You deserve the truth if I'm to be family. Mary's hand found his shoulder again, squeezed. Only if you're ready. It wasn't a bear, he said. It was men, bounty hunters maybe, or just thugs who thought a giant might be worth something to the right buyer. They jumped me in my camp, tried to net me like an animal. Dear God, Mary breathed. I fought. Didn't want to, but they gave no choice. Hurt 2 of them bad before the others fled. That's when I ran, wounded and bleeding. Storm caught me, turned me around. Would have died in these mountains if not for your door, your light in the darkness. Those men, will they come looking? Maybe, probably. It's why I tried to leave, why I should leave. You don't need my troubles brought to your door. No, Mary said firmly. We don't turn family out because troubles might follow. That's not how family works. You don't understand. These men, they saw me as a prize, a freak to be caged and shown, and they're not the first, won't be the last. This is my life. Mary, running, hiding, fighting when cornered. Then stop running, Emma said simply, as if it were the easiest thing in the world. Stay here with us. We'll protect you too. Elias laughed, watery but real. You'll protect me, little miss? Yes, Mama has a shotgun, and I'm very loud when I scream. We'll scare them away like you scared the wolves. Mary saw him break then, completely and utterly. This mountain of a man undone by a child's fierce loyalty. He pressed his face to Emma's hair, shoulders shaking. 23 years, he whispered. 23 years since anyone. I don't deserve this, don't deserve you. Deserving's got nothing to do with it, Mary said, borrowing his own words from days before. Love's freely given, remember? He looked at her then, and she saw everything in his eyes, the loneliness, the fear, the desperate hope, and yes, love, deep and true and terrified. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Be part of something. I'll make mistakes. We all will, Mary assured him. That's what family does, makes mistakes and forgives them and tries again. Emma yawned, the emotions of the evening catching up with her. Can Mr. Elias tuck me in tonight? Mary nodded. Watched this gentle giant carry her daughter to the loft with such tenderness it made her chest ache. She heard him humming something, an old lullaby maybe, and Emma's sleepy questions about tomorrow's chores. When he climbed back down, Mary was waiting. They stood facing each other in the firelight, the cabin warm around them. She meant it, Mary said, and so do I. You're family now, if you'll have us. If I'll... He laughed, disbelieving. Mary, you're offering home to someone who hasn't had one in over 2 decades, who's been nothing but a wandering... She stopped him with a finger to his lips. You're offering us protection, partnership, and if I'm not mistaken, your heart seems a fair trade to me. His hand came up to cover hers, engulfing it completely. You have it, my heart, freely given. The words echoed between them. Promise and prayer combined. Outside, wind howled through the mountains, and somewhere in the darkness, dangers lurked. But inside, in this small cabin that had somehow become large enough to hold a giant's dreams, 3 souls had found what they hadn't known they were seeking. Home, family, love strong enough to stand against whatever storms might come. The trouble started with hoofbeats on a cold Tuesday morning. Mary was kneading bread when she heard them, multiple horses approaching fast. Through the window, she saw 5 men dismounting near the fence, their faces grim with purpose. Elias, she called quietly. He was in the barn, had been since dawn, repairing stalls. But the men were already spreading out, 2 heading for the barn, 3 approaching the cabin. Mary recognized one, Tom Harper from town, whose wife sometimes traded eggs for cloth. Mrs. Collins. Harper called, not unkindly but with clear purpose. Need to speak with you. Mary wiped her hands on her apron, stepped onto the porch. Emma peered from behind her skirts. Mr. Harper, what brings you all the way out here? Had reports of a stranger in these parts. Big man, dangerous. His eyes scanned the property. Seen anyone like that? Before Mary could answer, a commotion erupted from the barn. Shouts, a crash. Then Elias emerged with 2 men training rifles on him. His hands were raised, but even in submission, his size made the men nervous. Sweet Jesus, one of them breathed. It's true. He's a giant. Found him. Another called to Harper. Matches the description exactly. Harper's face hardened. Mrs. Collins, step away from the cabin. This man's wanted for assault, maybe worse. Near killed 2 men down south. Those men attacked him, Mary said, moving to place herself between the guns and Elias. He was defending himself. That's for a judge to decide, Harper said. Not a widow woman who's maybe been taken in by a smooth-talking drifter. I'm no drifter, Elias spoke for the first time, voice calm despite the weapons aimed at him. Been helping Mrs. Collins with repairs. Nothing more. Helping, one of the younger men sneered. That what they call it now? Widow woman, living alone with a man ain't her husband? The implication hung ugly in the air. Mary felt heat rise in her cheeks, but before she could speak, Elias took a step forward. The rifles swung toward him. Watch your tongue, he said quietly. Mrs. Collins is a respectable woman who showed Christian charity to an injured man. Nothing improper has occurred, except you being here. Harper said, "In her home. Folks in town are talking. Let them talk," Mary said fiercely. "I've done nothing wrong, and neither has Mr. Thornton. He's dangerous," the sneering man insisted. "Look at the size of him. What's to stop him from—" "From what?" Mary demanded. "From fixing my roof? From chopping wood? From playing dolls with my daughter? From snapping your neck like a twig when the mood takes him," Harper finished bluntly. "Mrs. Collins, I know you've been alone since James passed, but this ain't the answer. This man needs to move on." "No!" Emma burst from behind Mary's skirts, running to Elias before anyone could stop her. She wrapped her arms around his leg, glaring at the men. "He's not dangerous. He's good and kind, and you're the ones being mean." "Emma, come back here," Harper ordered, genuine alarm in his voice as the child clung to the giant. But Elias had already dropped to one knee, gently detaching Emma's arms. "Go to your mama. Little miss, it's all right." "It's not all right. They want you to leave." "I know." He smoothed her hair with impossible gentleness. "But these men are just trying to protect you and your mama. That's a good thing, even if they're wrong about the danger." The tenderness in the gesture, the careful way he handled the child, made some of the men shift uncomfortably. But Harper held firm. "Touching scene, but it doesn't change facts. You need to be gone by sunset, stranger, and don't think of coming back." "You can't do that," Mary protested. "This is my property. I decide who's welcome." "And the town decides when someone's a threat," Harper countered. "You want to make this official? We can get the sheriff involved." "Course. Then there'd be questions about propriety, about what kind of example you're setting for your daughter." The threat was clear. Mary felt rage build in her chest. But Elias spoke before she could. "I'll go." "Elias, no. It's all right. Mary." He stood slowly, keeping his hands visible. "These men are just looking out for the community. I understand that." He met Harper's eyes. "I'll collect my things and be gone within the hour. See that you are." Harper said, "And stranger, don't come back. Next time we won't be so polite about it." The men backed away, keeping their weapons trained on Elias until they reached their horses, even mounted. They looked small compared to him, which perhaps explained some of their fear. As the hoofbeats faded, Mary turned on Elias. "You can't just give in to them. I can and I will." He headed for the barn, presumably to gather the few possessions he'd arrived with. Mary followed, Emma running to keep up. "This is wrong. You know it's wrong. What's wrong is bringing danger to your door." He pulled his worn pack from a corner, began checking its contents. "They're scared of me, Mary. Scared men do stupid things, violent things. They're bigoted fools who could burn this cabin down around your ears if they decided I was too much of a threat." He turned to face her, anguish clear in his eyes. "Don't you understand? This is what always happens. I stay too long, get too comfortable. People notice and get nervous. Then comes the mob, the torches, This isn't a mob. It's 5 frightened men who, today it's 5, tomorrow it's 10, next week it's the whole town." His hands clenched and unclenched. "I've seen it before, lived it before. I won't put you and Emma through that. So you'll just leave, after everything, after we—" Mary's voice broke. "After Emma called you family?" That stopped him. His shoulders sagged, all fight going out of him. "Especially because of that. You think I could live with myself if something happened to either of you because of me? Nothing will happen. We'll face them together." Together. He laughed bitterly. "A widow, a child, and a giant against a town's fear. How do you think that ends?" "Mary?" Before she could answer, Emma pushed past them both, climbed onto a hay bale, and put her small hands on Elias's face, forcing him to look at her. "You promised," she said fiercely. "When you tell a story, when you tuck someone in, when you say you're family, that's a promise. Papa always said a man keeps his promises." Elias closed his eyes, leaning into her tiny hands. "Sometimes, little miss, keeping promises means doing hard things, Like leaving to keep people safe. That's not keeping a promise. That's breaking it because you're scared. The truth of it, delivered with 5-year-old directness, hung in the air. Elias looked stricken. "Emma," Mary said gently. "Mister, Elias is trying to protect us." "From what? From mean men who tell lies?" Emma's chin jutted stubbornly. "We're not afraid of them, are we, Mama?" Mary met Elias's eyes over her daughter's head, saw the war there, love against fear, hope against experience. She made her choice. "No," she said firmly. "We're not afraid, and we don't abandon family because others are small-minded." "Mary, but," she continued, "we also don't make stands that endanger children. So, here's what we'll do. You'll leave, as they demanded. Make a show of it so they see you go." His face fell. "I understand. Then," Mary continued, "you'll circle back after dark. Your camp in the mountains, it's still there." A spark of hope flickered in his eyes. "Yes, but you'll stay there for now. Come down after dark for supper. Help with heavy work when the town folks aren't likely to visit. We'll be careful, discreet. Give them time to forget their fear. See that nothing terrible happens without you here. And if they don't forget, then we'll face that when it comes. But I won't let fear drive away the first good thing that's happened to us since—" She stopped, swallowed. "You belong here, Elias. With us. We'll find a way to make it work." Emma bounced on the hay bale. "Yes, and I can keep it secret. I'm very good at secrets." "Despite everything." Elias smiled. "I bet you are. Little miss?" He looked at Mary, searching her face. "You're sure this could get complicated, dangerous even?" "Everything worth having comes with risk," Mary said. "Question is whether you think we're worth it. You know you are, both of you. It's not about—" "Then it's settled." She straightened her shoulders. Every inch the frontier woman who'd survived worse than town gossip. "Go now. Make it look good, but come back tonight. Emma and I will leave the barn door unlatched and supper warming." For a moment, Elias just stared at her. Then he dropped his pack, crossed the space between them in 2 strides, and cupped her face in his enormous hands with butterfly gentleness. "You magnificent, stubborn, brave woman," he murmured. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Knocked on the right door," she whispered back. He kissed her forehead, soft as morning mist, then lifted Emma into a careful hug. "Take care of your mama. Little miss, I'll see you soon." "Promise?" Emma demanded. "Promise." They watched him go, making sure to appear defeated, shoulders slumped. The act was convincing enough that Mary almost called him back, but she saw the way he glanced toward the mountains, marking the path he'd take tonight, as his figure disappeared over the ridge. Emma slipped her hand into Mary's. "He'll come back, won't he, Mama?" "Yes, sweetheart, he'll come back." "Good, because I didn't finish showing him my letters, and he promised to help me write my name." Mary squeezed her daughter's hand, heart full of fierce determination. The town might have won this round, but they'd underestimated 3 things: a mother's courage, a child's faith, and a giant's devotion. Let them think they'd driven him off. Tonight, in darkness and secret, love would find its way home. The moon was new that night, leaving only starlight to guide Elias back to the cabin. Mary had left a lantern burning low in the barn, just enough light to show the way without attracting attention. She waited by the kitchen window, Emma long since asleep, watching for movement in the darkness. He came silent as a shadow despite his size, appearing suddenly at the barn door. Mary's heart leaped as she hurried out to meet him, carrying the dinner she'd kept warm. "Any trouble?" she whispered. "None. Made camp up by Crystal Falls. It's well hidden." He accepted the food gratefully, but seemed hesitant to enter the barn. "Mary, I've been thinking." "Don't." She took his hand. Let him inside. "Don't think yourself out of this. Just eat." They sat in the hay, sharing quiet conversation while he ate. It felt different now, charged with the awareness of what they were risking. When he finished, Elias set the plate aside and turned to her with serious eyes. "This can't last," he said softly. "Sneaking around, midnight visits. It's no life for you or Emma. It's temporary, until they see you're no threat. And if they never see that, if their fear only grows—" He shook his head. "I can't be a shadow in your life. Mary, you deserve better. Someone who can stand beside you in daylight, go to town meetings, be a proper—" "Stop." Mary moved closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. "You think I care about town meetings? About what's proper? You should care, for Emma's sake, if not your own. Emma needs someone who loves her, who protects her, who shows her what a good man looks like. That's you, Elias, not some proper man who fits in a church pew but has half your heart." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, so soft she almost missed it. "I want to give you everything, a real life, a real marriage, not this skulking in darkness." The word marriage hung between them like a held breath. Mary's pulse quickened. "Is that what you want? Marriage?" He looked at her then, and his face was naked with longing. "More than I've wanted anything in my life. But how can I ask that of you? To bind yourself to someone who has to hide, who might bring danger to your door, who—" Mary silenced him the only way she could think of, by pressing her lips to his. For a heartbeat. He froze. Then his arms came around her, gentle as always, drawing her against him. The kiss was tender, almost reverent, full of wonder and restrained passion. When they parted, Mary was breathless. "Does that answer your question?" "Mary." Her name was a prayer on his lips. "You can't know what you're offering. The life you'd have with me would be a life with the man I love." She finished firmly. "The man my daughter loves. That's worth any hardship." His hand came up to cradle her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "You love me? How could I not? You gentle giant who splits wood like it's nothing but handles my daughter like spun glass, who faces down wolves but gets tongue-tied by kindness, who carries so much pain but still has such sweetness in you." She covered his hand with hers. "Yes, Elias Thornton, I love you." He made a sound, half sob, half laugh. 23 years wandering, and I find you, find home, find—" He stopped, overcome. "Find what?" "Everything," he whispered. "You're everything. You and Emma both, my whole world." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "You're bigger than our whole world, too," she whispered back, remembering Emma's words. "Bigger than this cabin, this valley, this life we've built. But somehow you fit perfectly into it." This time, when he kissed her, it was different, deeper, surer, full of promise and commitment. When they broke apart, both were trembling. "Marry me," he said urgently. "I know it's impossible right now, but someday, when things settle—" "Yes. You don't have to answer now. Think about it. Consider what—" "Elias." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "Yes, today, tomorrow. In secret, or in front of the whole town. Yes." He caught her hand, pressed it to his chest where his heart thundered. "You mean it?" "With my whole heart." They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other in the barn's darkness, building dreams out of whispered plans and gentle touches. Then reality crept back in. "I should go," Elias said reluctantly. "Dawn comes early." "When will you come back?" "Tomorrow night. I can finish fixing the roof beam in the barn. Been bothering me that it's still sagging." Mary smiled through her tears. "Only you would propose marriage and then worry about roof beams. Have to take care of my family," he said simply, and the word family made her heart soar. At the barn door, he pulled her close one more time. "It won't always be like this," he promised. "Someday I'll court you proper, walk you to church, dance with you at Harvest Festival, be the husband you deserve." "You already are," she assured him. "Everything else is just details." He kissed her once more, then melted back into the darkness. Mary stood watching until she couldn't distinguish his shadow from the mountain's bulk. Then she went inside, checked on Emma, and lay down with her heart too full for sleep. The next days fell into a pattern. Elias would arrive after full dark, eat the meal Mary saved, work on whatever project needed doing, then disappear before dawn. Emma, true to her word, kept the secret, though she asked daily when Mr. Elias could come back for real. Soon, sweetheart, Mary would say, praying it was true. But as the week wore on, the strain showed. Elias grew quieter, the shadows under his eyes deeper. Working at night and hiding by day was wearing on him. More than that, Mary could see how it hurt him to leave each morning, to miss Emma's daytime chatter, to exist on the edges of the life they were building. It came to a head on the 8th night. Elias was repairing the chicken coop by lantern light when the hammer slipped. Smashing his thumb, he cursed, low and harsh, then sat heavily on a stump. "Let me see," Mary said, reaching for his hand. "It's nothing." But he let her examine it, watched her gentle ministrations with such longing it broke her heart. "This isn't working," she said quietly. "I know." The admission seemed to pain him more than the injury. "I thought I could do it, live in shadows, but every morning when I leave, it gets harder. And Emma," his voice caught, "she left me a drawing under the hay, her and you and me, standing together in sunshine. For when you come home," she wrote. Mary's eyes burned. "Oh, Elias, I can't be what you need like this. Can't be a proper father to her, sneaking around like a thief. Can't be a husband to you, always looking over my shoulder." He pulled his hand back, clenched it despite the pain. Maybe they were right. "Maybe I should move on. Let you find someone who—" "No!" The word came out sharp as a slap. "Don't you dare. Don't you dare give up on us." "I'm not giving up. I'm trying to do what's best." "What's best is our family staying together. What's best is showing Emma that love is worth fighting for." Mary stood, pacing in agitation. "You think leaving would help? You think she'd understand? She'd spend her whole life wondering why she wasn't enough to make you stay." That stopped him cold. "Mary, no, it's not about her not being enough. That's not how a child sees it. Trust me, I know." Old pain colored her voice. "My father left when I was 7. Said it was for work, for opportunity. But all I knew was that he chose something else over us. Don't do that to Emma. Don't do that to me." Elias stood slowly, reached for her. "Come here." She went into his arms, let him hold her while her anger dissolved into tears. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Scared they'll hurt you. Scared they'll take you away. But I'm more scared of losing you to fear." "Shh." He stroked her hair, rocked her gently. "I'm not going anywhere. I promise. We'll figure this out." "How?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "What if we didn't hide anymore?" Mary pulled back to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if I came back openly, moved into the barn proper, worked the land, made it clear I'm here to stay?" His jaw set with determination. "If they want to run me off, let them try it in daylight. Let them explain to Emma why they're taking away someone she loves. Elias, that's dangerous. If they come in force, then we'll face them together, like you said." He cupped her face. "I'm tired of running. Mary, tired of hiding. You and Emma, you're worth standing for, fighting for if need be. And if they bring the sheriff, make it legal, then we make our case. I've done nothing wrong but be born big. Last I checked, that's not a crime." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Besides, I have something now I never had before." "What's that?" "Something to lose, someone to protect. That makes a man brave in ways you can't imagine." Mary searched his face, saw the resolution there. Her gentle giant was done retreating. "When?" "Tomorrow. I'll come at noon. Broad daylight. Help you with the garden where everyone can see. Let them get used to the sight of me working your land. Our land," she corrected softly. "Our land," he agreed, and kissed her like a man sealing a vow. That night, they worked side by side in companionable silence, preparing for whatever tomorrow might bring. When it came time for him to leave, Mary caught his arm. "Stay," she said simply. "Just tonight. Sleep in the barn if you must, but stay. I need to know you're close." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll bed down in the loft. Keep watch." "Thank you." But as she turned to go, He caught her hand. Mary, what you said about being bigger than your whole world. You and Emma, you're bigger than mine. Bigger than all the mountains and valleys I've wandered. Bigger than any life I dreamed I'd have. She squeezed his fingers. Then let's make our world big enough for all of us. Together. Together. He agreed. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Possibly danger. The town's fear wouldn't vanish overnight. But tonight, her giant was under the same roof. Her daughter slept peaceful, and love stood guard against the darkness. It was enough. It was everything. The sun stood high when Elias walked back into their lives. No skulking, no shadows. Just a man returning to where he belonged. Mary watched from the porch as he crossed the meadow, tools over his shoulder, moving with quiet purpose. Emma burst from the cabin with a cry of joy. "Mr. Elias, you came back in the sunshine!" He caught her as she flew into his arms, lifting her high. "I did, little miss. Is that all right with you?" "It's perfect." She hugged his neck fiercely. "Now everyone can see you're ours." Word traveled fast in the valley. By afternoon, Mary spotted riders on the ridge, watching. By evening, she knew tomorrow would bring another confrontation. But tonight, they ate supper together like a real family. Elias in James's old chair that creaked under his weight. Emma chattering about everything he'd missed. "We should prepare," Elias said after Emma was abed. "They'll come tomorrow." "I know." Mary touched the rifle above the mantel. "I'll be ready. No guns." He said firmly, "Violence only proves their fears right. We meet them with open hands and truth." The next morning brought a larger group, not just Harper and his men, but others. Mary recognized the minister, the store owner, several farming families. Even old Sam Henderson had come. They stopped at the fence line, a small crowd with mixed expressions. Fear, curiosity, determination. Elias emerged from the barn, moving slow and deliberate. He'd cleaned up, trimmed his wild beard, worn his best shirt. He looked less mountain man and more farmer, husband, father. "Morning, folks," he said calmly. Harper dismounted, hand resting on his pistol. "Thought we made ourselves clear, stranger." "You did, and I heard you." Elias moved to stand beside Mary on the porch. "But I've done some thinking since. Realized I was letting fear rule me. Mine and yours. We ain't afraid of you," one man called out, though his voice suggested otherwise. "Sure you are," Elias said simply. "And I understand why. Man my size shows up. You don't know my character, my intentions. You want to protect your community. That's admirable." The honesty seemed to catch them off guard. The minister stepped forward. "Then you understand why we can't have you here. It's nothing personal." "Everything's personal when it comes to family." Elias interrupted gently. "And that's what Mary and Emma are to me. Family." "You've known them 2 weeks," Harper protested. "I've known them long enough to see Mary's courage, Emma's pure heart. Long enough to fall in love with both of them." He took Mary's hand, engulfing it in his. "Long enough to know I want to spend my life protecting and providing for them." Murmurs ran through the crowd. The minister frowned. "That's all well and good, but—" "Let him speak, Reverend," old Sam Henderson interrupted. "Man's got a right to state his case." Elias nodded gratefully. "I know what you see when you look at me. Something dangerous, different. And you're not wrong. I am different. Been cast out for it more times than I can count. But different doesn't mean evil." He stepped forward, and several men tensed, but Elias simply sat on the porch steps, making himself smaller. "I was 15 when my own father sent me away. Not because I'd done wrong, but because folks were scared of how big I'd grown. Since then, I've wandered, worked honest jobs, logging, mining, building, never stayed long because eventually, always, fear would win." Emma appeared in the doorway, slipping past Mary to sit beside Elias. He put his arm around her automatically, protective. "Then I stumbled on this cabin, more dead than alive, and instead of barring the door like any sensible person, Mary showed mercy. Her and Emma both. First time in 23 years someone saw me as a man instead of a monster." His voice roughened. You ask me to leave that? Might as well ask me to tear out my own heart. Pretty words, Harper said, though less harshly. But what about those men you hurt? The ones hunting you? They attacked me, tried to net me like an animal, sell me to God knows who. Elias met each gaze steadily. I defended myself, nothing more. Never threw a punch in anger my whole life, and don't intend to start now. But you could, someone called out. Man, your size could do terrible damage. So could any of you, with a gun or knife or even bare hands. Difference is, I know my strength. Live with it every day. Makes me more careful, not less. The store owner stepped forward. What are your intentions here? Truly. Elias stood, keeping Emma close. To marry Mary, if she'll have me. To raise Emma as my own. To work this land. Improve it. Maybe expand the cabin come spring. To be a good neighbor. Help with barn raisings and harvests. To sit in church, if you've got pews that'll hold me. And be part of this community. That's all. That's everything. Elias said simply. It's all I've wanted for longer than I can remember. A place to belong. People to love. Work for my hands and purpose for my days. Silence stretched. Then Emma, in her clear child's voice. Mister, Elias saved us from wolves, and fixed our roof, and taught me my letters better. Why don't you want him to stay? The question, innocent and direct, seemed to shame some of the men. The minister cleared his throat. Child, it's complicated. No, it's not, Emma insisted. He's good and kind and makes Mama smile again. That's not complicated. Mary found her voice. My daughter's right. You're judging a man on his size alone. If Elias were normal height, would we be having this conversation? If he were normal height, those men wouldn't be hunting him, Harper pointed out. Men hunt what they fear or want to exploit, Sam Henderson said unexpectedly. Don't make their target wrong. I've watched this family since James died, seen Mary struggle, doing work too hard for any woman alone. Now I see her land improved, her woodpile high, her daughter laughing. You want to take that away because the man's too tall? Sam, the minister started. No, Reverend, I've lived in these mountains 60 years, seen plenty of men, small and large. Size don't determine character. Actions do. He looked at Elias. What I see is a man who works hard, treats women and children gentle, and stands ready to commit to family. That's the kind of man we need more of, not less. The tide was turning. Mary could feel it in the shifting stances, the uncertain glances. But Harper held firm. What about when those hunters come? Because they will. You'll bring violence to our valley. Violence finds its way everywhere, Elias said quietly. But I promise you this, if trouble comes, I'll meet it away from here. Won't let it touch this town or this family. How can you promise that? Because I've been running my whole life. I know how to lead danger away. His jaw set. But I'm done running from community. From love. That's a different thing entirely. The minister stepped forward. If we were to accept this, there'd be conditions, expectations. Name them. Church attendance, proper courtship, no living on the property until marriage, contributing to community works. And if there's any sign, any hint of violence or impropriety, you'll have none, Elias assured him. I'll court Mary proper, help with any work needed, be the best neighbor I can. All I ask is a chance to prove myself. Long moments passed. Men conferred in low voices. Finally, Harper spoke, clearly unhappy but overruled. 3 months. You get 3 months to prove you're what you claim. One problem, one complaint, and you're gone. Understood? Understood. Elias extended his hand. Thank you. Harper stared at the offered hand, massive, scarred from work, but open in peace. Finally, reluctantly, he shook it. His hand disappeared in Elias' grip, but the giant was careful, gentle, one by one. Others came forward. Not all. Some mounted and rode away without a word, but enough. The minister muttered about proper courtship. Sam Henderson clapped Elias on the back, nearly reaching his shoulder. The store owner mentioned needing help with a barn raising next month. When they'd all gone, the little family stood together on the porch, Emma between them, holding both their hands. "It's not over," Mary said quietly. "Some will never accept you." "But some will," Elias replied. "That's more than I've had in decades. And even if they all turned against us, I'd still stay. You and Emma, you're my whole world now." "You're bigger than our whole world," Emma said, repeating her favorite phrase. "But you fit just right." Mary laughed, tension flowing out of her. "Come on, both of you. Let's have some lunch. Then you, Mr. Thornton, can court me properly while fixing the garden fence." "Is that proper courtship?" Elias asked, amused. "It is if I say so," Mary declared, and led her family inside. Spring came early that year, bringing wildflowers and hope in equal measure. The cabin had grown, new rooms added with the help of neighbors who'd learned to see past size to character. In the garden, Elias and Emma had planned. Green shoots pushed through dark earth. The wedding was small but joyful, held in the meadow where Elias had first walked back in sunshine. Emma stood as witness, beaming as her mama married her giant. Even Harper attended, grudging respect replacing fear. There'd been challenges. The hunters had come, as predicted, but they'd found not one giant alone, but a community standing together. Faced with unified opposition, they'd retreated to easier prey. Elias's promise held. He'd protected his valley by being part of it, not apart from it. Now, as Mary stood in her garden watching Elias teach Emma to transplant seedlings, she marveled at how much had changed. The man who'd collapsed on her doorstep, bloody and alone, had become the center of their world. The cabin built for two had stretched to hold three, and would stretch again come winter. She'd tell Elias about the baby tonight. "Mama, look," Emma called. "I planted 3 whole rows. Beautiful, sweetheart." Elias straightened, dirt on his hands, sun in his smile. He crossed to Mary, pulled her close with infinite care. "Happy?" he asked. "More than I dreamed possible, even with a giant for a husband?" "Especially with a giant for a husband." She reached up to touch his face. "You're bigger than my whole world, Elias Thornton. But somehow, miraculously, our world grew big enough to hold you." He kissed her there in the garden, while Emma giggled and mountains stood eternal witness. Love had found a way, as it always does, to make the impossible possible, to turn fear into acceptance, loneliness into family, a house into a home. And in that green and growing place, 3 hearts beat as one, no longer alone, no longer afraid, but part of something larger than any of them could be alone. A family, a future, a love big enough to fill the vast Montana sky. The giant had found his home at last. And home, he'd learned, wasn't a place at all. It was 2 hearts brave enough to say, "You belong here, with us. Always." In the end, that was the only measure that mattered. Not size or strength or the opinions of others, but the simple, profound truth of belonging, of being loved not despite differences, but because of all the ways those differences made their world richer, stronger, complete. The mountains watched over them, ancient and knowing, and in their shadow, a once lonely cabin rang with laughter, with hope, with the everyday miracle of lives intertwined by choice and chance and courage. Home, family, love. For a giant and his girls, it was everything. It was enough. It was perfect. Thank you so much for listening to our story from the Wild West. I hope the journey of Mary, Emma, and Elias touched your heart as much as it touched mine. Where are you listening to this story from? I'd love to know. Please share in the comments below so we can connect with fellow listeners from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more tales of love, courage, and adventure from America's frontier days. What did you think of Elias and Mary's love story? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment and love hearing from you. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Research Opus 4.